Hey there, friends. It is October 22nd. It's Wednesday, 2025. I have about four things I want to talk about. I'm doing a headshot. You may be wondering what happened to that black hat I used to wear all the time. My Stetson said gun club inside. Had to get clearance from oversight for that. That's a joke. I lost it again, and this time it hasn't come back to me. There's another hat out there with my name in it that I kind of thought the state of Oregon had found it, or there was a lost and found on the web that had a .gov, I think, extension, and you could see if your name was there, and if so, maybe you could reclaim whatever it was. And I kind of thought that might be my hat because they had something of mine, but it didn't turn out to be my hat. I forget what it turned out to be. I think it just turned out to be some money they found. I don't remember. It wasn't a lot. Anyway, just catching up on some loose ends, like the hat. I do have another ceremonial hat, but I'm just going to go hatless here. And first of all, no kings. That is a campaign, I call it, because there was a first rally with that, and then this was, they call it 2.0. So clearly it's a theme more than an event. And yes, it goes back. Katie Couric shows here on Facebook that the No Kings, kind of like Make America Great Again, is an ancient slogan, and it has kind of, in its earlier 50 years ago incarnation, the inevitable kind of anti-Brit sentiment because we're coming off the Revolutionary War. Not that 50 years ago we were doing the revolution, but go back, 1770s, late 1770s. The spirit then was we're getting away from the Eastern Hemisphere, basically. We were the Western Hemisphere. That came up in the 20s as well, 1920s. And we're kind of there in some ways today in that we have a lot of hemispheric awareness, I would say. And the fact that Europe, Russia, China are all in the Eastern Hemisphere, whereas the Western Hemisphere is really what we would like to call the West, out here in Cascadia, where we have our own little idiolect. Actually, an idiolect, I think, is more at the level of the individual. We all speak our own idiolect or idiolectic language. And then there's, clans, families have their own kind of inner speak. You can define sort of a community by how insiders talk to each other versus how they talk to outsiders. And then how intelligible are the outsiders to the insiders is another question. There's a lot to discuss. But I would be getting a little bit off topic, but only a little. Because I think with the No Kings thing, there's this question of who's in control of the PR. Where did the frogs come from? How did it all turn into a cosplay event? Well, partly it's obvious. The other side, all kitted out, looking paramilitary, that's cosplay. So coming back with Halloween costumes is definitely apropos. It's like it's cosplay versus cosplay. And then there were others, I'd say, subcultural eddies just in the Portland context, not speaking for the whole country here, just speaking for Portland and the frogs and so on. There were some sort of inner sanctum frogs, AI generated in some cases, that I was looking at as the frogs became important. And I was thinking a lot of continuity is going on here with the animism and the Wanderers and Keiko being an honorary Wanderer. In other words, I liked the animal aspect of it a lot. That it wasn't just about humans and their silliness, right? Although that's always a big part of it with humans. So I enjoyed the No Kings. I walked down Belmont and came back on the bus on a 14 that was wandering on its rally riot schedule. So the buses here, they are experienced with Portland's street activities and they know how to switch to a different route system. So I got to ride the 14 across the Burnside Bridge, and that's insider. If you're an insider, Portland insider, you know that that's rare because the 14 goes across the Hawthorne Bridge. Okay, switching to a related topic, who's in control of PR? That was with regard to No Kings. And my point is, if you're an astroturfy kind of DNC kind of person way off in DC, clearly you can't expect to control all the micro details of what's going on in Portland with its quote unquote resistance, right? The spin we've got on things here in Cascadia are of necessity regional. It's a bioregion, Cascadia. And kind of along those lines, we pay attention to Alaska. We did take the Alaska summit somewhat seriously, and it's gratifying to find out that, yes, the train that we were talking about, how cable TV in the U.S. wouldn't touch it, the Under the Bering Strait infrastructure project that we've been following for decades from the U.S. side again because of Genie, because of World Game, not news to us, and also, as I mentioned in one of my YouTubes, the LaRouche people are into it. I'm not considered LaRouche myself, but I'm definitely a Buckian or whatever they're called, World Gamer. So yeah, that's all kind of like not news to us that there could be a train there, and that the fact that the Russian propaganda is tilted in that direction is gratifying because we know that the significance of the Alaska location was not just bleeped over. At least the Russians brought it up. Now they've noticed how reluctant the White House team is to float this boat or trial balloon or whatever they call it because it's so off narrative. If you're from the Atlantic side of things, if you're a Euro Atlanticist and you think you're in the West because, you're European, which I would consider Eurasian, but anyway, you can basically talk about tomahawks and HIMARS and weapons. That's kind of your adult way of talking. It's juvenile in a lot of ways, but it's of necessity. I'm not saying we can avoid it, but it is higher on the self actualization curve to be talking about positive mega projects like Apollo Soyuz in the old days. Back in the Apollo Soyuz days, that was the height of collaboration, and it would be kind of retro to go from that kind of space collaboration to something so prosaic as a train, but on the other hand, not really. This is super higher tech than anything so far attempted, and it's way beyond the channel, right? France to England, it's way beyond that. And in my little subculture, we're really just looking for a voltage link up, a grid connection. Like the trains, that's far more appealing, I think, to the science fiction covers of magazines and stuff than something so boring as data and electrical hookups. But in terms of data centers in the cold north and cooling them and computing our AI cartoons somewhere where we're not like already in the desert and sucking up the water table to keep cool. We're like in Siberia maybe, but we need to bust the data back to Hollywood or wherever, wherever the movies are in production elsewhere on the internet. So thick data cables, obviously, in the data center area. It's not like it's going to melt all the ice. It's that the heat from the data centers can fuel or heat these domed kind of Cornwall communities. Cornwall meaning Cornwall, UK, Eden Project. Scale that up in your mind and picture it heated because, hey, we've got a data center here to maintain anyway, right? And so you live there and it's kind of a nice lifestyle. So, anyway, the science fiction we're all about over here in Cascadia because we already have these data centers, these big data centers all along the Columbia. So we know about this economy. So that's what I've been sharing with the WILPF ladies, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I've been giving them the rundown on the data centers that we've got and the hydropowers that we've got and the translatability of this kind of economy over to the other side of the Bering Strait hookup. And the last thing, bridge space, I'll just say briefly, if you watch my previous or one before last video, it's all about the symposium slides, which I'm encouraging you to present willy-nilly, like whether I'm there or not. You don't need my permission. It's already embedded in the YouTube. It's implied that you can take those slides and present them somewhere, and maybe I'll find out about it later. That's fine. Or maybe I won't. That's fine too. Because as I explained to Daniel, my motive here is I don't want to be the bottleneck for something as big as, the synergetics is. There's a lot of people involved, and I don't want it to look like, oh, Kirby sat on X or Y, and therefore there was a big logjam. It's like, it's not in my interest to appear to be sitting on something important and not sharing it. So clearly, when I've got these slide decks that work for me, it's my last is the last thing on my mind that I want to hog them or hoard them and say they're just for me, because that would be, it's like standing in front of a onrushing wall of water coming out of a dam or something, like a spigot just opened. Like if you're the kid who's got your finger in the dam and you pull your finger out or whatever, you don't want to then kind of try to look through it. It's going to be like high pressure, and I feel like there's a lot of pressure, a lot of voltage around the curriculum as it is and the curriculum as it will need to be as we morph, a la Arnold Toynbee. And I'll leave with him talking. I mean, I'm not going to play the clips right here, but I have some clips saved on Synergeo where he's talking about how we're going to have to get over ourselves if we're going to last another few million years on the planet and not blow it for all our descendants because of all these tribal hostilities that we've built up. Just saw the movie Hostiles last night, by the way, Christian Bale. So, we got to get over that, and that's what this is partly about, World Game, right? Not news if you've been attending to this channel. And I'll talk to you next time.